going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another review. Today I am reviewing Lilo and Stitch, the live-action Disney remake. Now, I went and saw this on Memorial Day with my family, and before I go any further, spoiler alert, I know it's a Disney movie, there are remakes, but yes, there are some things that are different about this movie, so if you don't want any spoilers for whatever reason, don't watch this video. I'm giving you your warning now. Lastly, be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you never miss a video. Check out all the other content we got going on, guys. It's a whole lot of fun on this channel. Stay tuned. So me growing up as a little 10-year-old, I remember Lilo and Stitch when it first came out, and I was floored by just how much heart and feel was in the movie, and it just felt so raw and real. And all of the characters, whether it was Stitch, Nani, Lilo, even Pleakley on a certain extent, because I loved bugs, and I loved maybe not mosquitoes so much, but I loved bugs. It was so approachable and relatable just how much care the writers took into each of these characters. And Ohana is just such a simple concept, but if you look back, some of the biggest movies have the simplest themes, and this theme is family is everything, even if it's not by blood. Family is who you connect with, and nobody gets left behind or forgotten. The literal phrase and the main line of the movie is the theme. Nobody gets left behind or forgotten. Fast forward to this movie, and there are two types of things that were forgotten. One, things that I wish were left in the movie but were forgotten somehow by the writers, and two, things that were put in the movie that I wish were forgotten. So let's get right into them. Now, for starters, the entire idea of family was different for Lilo and Nani. It felt like it was more of a microscope on the relationship between Nani and Lilo rather than Lilo and Stitch, or Nani and Stitch, or Stitch and honestly anybody for that matter. So why? Well, for starters, Nani as a character is different. They gave her a lot more accolades. They gave her all of these medals, and she was an aspiring marine biologist too. And on top of that, she's now the sole guardian of Lilo. So they kept that the same. They have the line in there where Lilo says, "I like you more as a sister than a mother," but then it flip-flops at the end. Lilo, on the other hand, is pretty much the same, with maybe like a little less sass, but Maya Kealoha, for all intents and purposes, for this being her first film, she knocks it out of the park. She is a phenomenal Lilo. She does such a good job. Chris Standers comes back as Stitch, does such a great job with everything that he's given. But I really got to give the props up to Maya Kealoha because she just was Lilo to a T. Now, the Lilo that she was portraying, though, is different, and we'll get into that. Yes, her character was essentially the same, but there were little tiny bits that were different, and the environment in which Lilo creates an entire relationship with Nani, with Stitch, with Cobra, with all the other people that are in the movie, that's different. And that drastically changes exactly how the movie feels. What's the tone? What's the pacing? And all of that is different. And so it got me thinking during the movie, what is it about this relationship that just feels different? Well, for starters, they took a lot of the essence of what Nani's character actually was. And I felt myself feeling this for a lot of the characters, that all of the unique characteristic love that I felt for them in the original, it just wasn't there, and it was washed over to create this kind of hollow shell of what I knew them to be. And yes, I get it, it's a kids movie, but you're building on previously established IP that was unbelievably popular to the point where you can't go anywhere without seeing a Stitch plushie. In any toy store, any Disney shop, Stitch is everywhere, and he was the marketing genius of the early 2000s. And you have these already established characters that created so much feeling, and all you had to do was just recreate that, but you did it. The main gripe I have about Nani is that she loses a lot of her sympathetic characteristics. So for example, her moments where she really gets a chance to get closer to Lilo. She has the scene where she's in the hammock singing Aloha Oi to Lilo when they're about to separate, but there's a main important scene that they gave to somebody else. So in the remake, they have David, and they have David's mother, who's actually played by the voice actor who played Mrs. Hasegawa in the original. She is now the neighbor. Now, in the original, Nani takes Lilo after watching her wish upon a star, wishing for a friend, any friend, the best angel that you have. Nani feels so bad that she takes Lilo down to the dog shelter to find that forever companion. That is Nani's concession to Lilo to try to give her some semblance of that wish that she wished. Now, in the remake, the new neighbor, she takes Lilo down to the shelter. They get a dog, they bring it back home, and Nani, what does she do? She immediately wants that thing gone. She tells Lilo, I want that thing gone tomorrow. We are going back to the dog shelter to bring that thing home, to bring that thing back tomorrow. So you've taken a real sentimental moment, a bonding moment, a responsive moment from guardian to child, from sister to sister, and you've given it to another character whose actions end up diluting one of the main character's intents and motives. And I felt that it was just such a robbing of who Nani actually was, because they viewed her as this strong, sympathetic character who will do anything for Lilo, anything for Ohana. And I understand that they wanted to make other characters do that, but by doing that, you dilute the pool because there was only a certain amount of sympathy that the audience is willing to give. And if you're divvying it up with new characters, then the main characters who you're supposed to feel things for, you don't feel things for as much, because you're getting less of it because it's spread out now. Now, to be fair, they didn't really give Nani much to go off of anyway, because a lot of the scenes that had Lilo and Stitch in there, Nani was written as being indifferent to begin with. So, like, for example, that iconic scene where Lilo finds out that Stitch can actually voice a record by putting his nail on the record and opening his mouth, and Elvis comes out. In the original, Nani is flabbergasted, her jaws drop to the floor, and she doesn't know what to make of it. In this, she's on her phone, she has no time for it, she doesn't even notice it. So there's really not a lot you can do with that if she's not noticing the relationship between Lilo and Stitch, the main characters. And to that point, it brings me into a bigger issue that I had with the film, which is that the relationship between Lilo and Stitch really wasn't as there as I really wanted it to be, really wasn't as there as I was used to it being given the original. And that's because I found myself more than once, and this is not a good sign, throughout the film asking myself the question, where is Stitch? Like, did he disappear up into the walls? I understand that that's kind of his character, but like, shouldn't he be a part of his movie? So here's the problem. Disney was only greenlit $100 million because they thought that this was going to go directly to Disney+. And because of that, they didn't have enough money to actually have Stitch in every shot that they needed. Hell, they cut Gantu completely out. And Stitch, who needed to be in these sentimental moments, was completely omitted. And I felt like at some points they only had him in, but he was like a blue sassy dog. There wasn't any Stitch that we've come to sympathize with and be entertained by. And I was like, that is crazy. If you don't have the funding, if you can't put Stitch in all of these moments and give him the proper arc that you need and allow him to be the catalyst to give everybody else the arc that they need, why are we making this remake in the first place? If you want to do it right. Otherwise, it's just a simple cash grab and everybody can see through it. So there was less Stitch. There was no Captain Gantu, which means that we were missing a main antagonist, which meant that Jumba had to see the antagonist role all the way through to where he captured Stitch, said he was going to turn him into 627, a more chaotic version of himself, and we got a few glimpses of some of the cousins from the show, so I thought that was a nice little Easter egg. That was kind of cool. But Jumba became the main antagonist, and so because of that, he never got a chance to actually have an arc himself. He never got a chance to be part of the family in the end. In the end, it was really just Pleakley and Cobra and the social worker and the neighbors and everybody else, and we'll get to that in a second. But it was really just Jumba, and to that point, really quick, it's not a huge deal, but Zach Galifianakis was hands down one of the worst casting choices of this entire film. His voice didn't match anything about the character of Jumba. You can do away with the Russian accent, I'm fine with that, but just his voice alone didn't match the body type and the mannerisms of Jumba. And even when Jumba transformed into human form, aka actual Zach Galifianakis, you see him just being the straight character, and who in the hell in their right mind would cast Zach Galifianakis as the straight character, even when he's partnered up with Billy Magnuson, who's supposed to be the funny, goofy character as Pleakley, and he looks like he could choke Zach Galifianakis out, given the fact that Zach Galifianakis is much more serious in this entire film than I've ever seen him, even on Between Two Ferns. He was Jumba, but again, he was Jumba, but they stripped him of all his wit, his satire, his comedicness. You know, when they were fighting, I remember in the original, him passing the gun that's about to blow up between himself and Stitch, and he's passing it back, and they're saying, "Oh, it's your birthday, I remember, oh, hey, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah." You don't get any of that. You just get frowny face Zach Galifianakis through the entire movie, and I just felt that antagonist just fell flat. There was nothing to go off of from that. It felt like a standard failed buddy cop, Wile E. Coyote kind of chase. And that's not what you want from Lilo and Stitch. We expected better than that. Now, going back to the original point, Stitch was in this movie for far less than he actually was in the original. And I can't for the life of me understand why they would do that, other than the fact that they didn't have enough money to render him. Now, albeit he looked great, but put him where he needs to be. I don't understand why some of these live actions choose to sacrifice the integrity of the story for maybe some of the looks barely looked rendered at a certain point. Pleakley in live action form is not fun to look at. He almost reminded me of Flounder from the live action Little Mermaid film, and that is not a scene or sight I want to see anytime soon. But they made Stitch essentially out to be a B character in his own film. Again, a sassy dog, which we have seen before, but it's not Stitch. It's not alien Stitch. It's not original Stitch. And I would argue, yes, that could be good if the alternative was better, but I just think that it wasn't. One of the main reasons why I don't think the change really helped the film is because the tone just felt so different. Now, what do I mean by that? It felt like we as the audience were being pampered through the movie, because there were times where we could have gotten some real, authentic, emotional moments, but every time we got close to that, it felt like they pulled us back and they started rocking us in their arms, making things okay, making us feel better, soothing us, not letting us sit in that deep, emotional rock bottom that the original made us feel. I was in tears well into the first half of Lilo and Stitch because I was a lonely kid. I felt alone. I was an only child. We didn't have the internet, and so when 5 o'clock hit and I had to come in from playtime, I was alone. It was just me, my parents. I had no brothers and sisters to talk to, nobody to emote to. It was just me. I related to Lilo in that sense, and so I knew what I wanted to feel in this one, but I just couldn't get myself there. And if you're finding yourself forcing emotions or expecting emotions and giving the movie more credit than it deserves, that's not a good sign. It felt almost afraid to go there. Like, the audience these days are more sensitive to certain topics and we don't go all the way with them. But why not? That's exactly what gave Lilo and Stitch the emotional depth to make it a cultural icon of a movie decades past its debut. For example, and I cannot understand why they chose to do this, because it wouldn't have cost that much money, because it was mostly focused on Lilo, and then you would have Stitch saunter off. They cut out the ugly duckling scene. That was the scene that tore my heart to shreds when I watched the original. Not even just him walking in the woods alone and saying "lost," which gutted me like a fish on seafood Sunday. But the scene leading into that, with Lilo talking about how he can leave, she understands, she doesn't want him to leave, but she understands, and he's hanging on by the windowsill, and he can hear her, and she said, "I'll remember you. I remember everyone who leaves." And I can't even talk about it now without choking up. They cut that entire scene from Lilo's interaction with Stitch, the Stitch leaving, to the ugly duckling scene, We never got any of that. Instead, what we got as a replacement is Lilo sleeping, Stitch running away and going back to that dog kennel, which I understand what they were going for, but it created about maybe a quarter of the emotional depth that the original did. And then when Lilo goes and finds him, Stitch is blaming himself, saying, I caused all this is my fault. And what does Lilo do? Instead of pushing him away and saying, yes, this is your fault, you did this, the onus is on you, she goes, no, it's not your fault. Hey, feel better, don't worry about it, it's okay, it's not your fault, we're here for you, Ohana, 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 Ohana. And in that moment, that decision to coddle and pamper Stitch became a reoccurring thing throughout the film, because every time there was a moment in which we had the chance to blame Stitch for something, we didn't do it. It worked in the original, but we didn't do it here. So for example, another one where Nani is seconds away from losing Lilo. David says the famous line, I really thought they had a chance, but then you came along, or something to that effect. We don't have that second part of the line, so it's just, I really thought they had a chance. Maybe they thought that the second half would be implied and that it would be carried over by all the nostalgics like me to fill in the blank, but that's the gutting line. That's the thing that makes Stitch blame himself, and we never quite did that. It felt like we dialed everything back and we were just emotionally coddling the audience, and I felt patronized at a certain point. I was like, no, gut me, make me feel something, because as of right now, I feel like I'm eating a saltine cracker without the saltine part. Even the stakes felt lessened, They had Cobra Bubbles in it, but they had Cobra Bubbles already establishing himself from the get-go as a CIA agent. So there was no guesswork. Maybe they assumed that the secret was out and that wouldn't be a big reveal. And so they started Cobra Bubbles out as a CIA agent undercover as a social worker from the get-go. So then we created another social worker played by Tia Carrera, which I thought was a nice Easter egg because she's the original voice of Nani. But she took a much more sympathetic approach to the social worker, which was good. We want to support our social workers and everything. We want to see that they're actually very nice people who don't want to break up families. But at the same time, she gave Nani a multi-point plan to prevent from losing Lilo by Friday. It included health insurance, paying bills, cleaning the house, all that stuff, stocking the fridge, and it felt achievable. We actually felt that there really wasn't much to worry about because they were achievable goals, and we really didn't feel a sense of dread. In the original, we didn't have any plan. Cobra just said, figure it out. I'm gonna rip the door open and you have until this day to figure your stuff out. And we just sat there in this desperate, uneasy peril, hoping that Nani would figure something out, because we don't want to see her lose Lilo. We don't want to see the Ohana broken up. And then Stitch gets thrown in and we're like, oh my God, what is she going to do? I never felt those stakes, even at the moment where Nani actually lost Lilo and it was time for her to go talk to Lilo about the fact that they're not going to be together anymore. I didn't feel the stakes. It didn't feel like the moments were earned, and part of it was the editing and part of it was the pacing, but a lot of it had to do with the fact that I didn't feel like they actually built up the stakes. I didn't feel like they built up those emotional moments because they built in all of these safeguards and undercut every emotional moment with either pulling back on the actual weight of the emotion or coddling or just avoiding altogether. And I was so flabbergasted as to why they would make that choice, because Lilo and Stitch is known for being one of the most emotional Disney movies, and they just put it back together without the emotion. Wow. So here she's given a plan to keep the family together, to keep Ohana together, which is great. And then she loses Lilo anyway. So if you knew she was going to lose it, then why lessen the impact? And that brings us to the final specific part, which is the ending. Now, the ending was very controversial for very good reasons. I understand everybody's points. Everybody has different opinions as to what they thought of the ending. Mine is I feel like they robbed some characters of some pretty genuine moments to really wrap this thing up with a nice little bow. A lot of this movie dealt with other characters stepping in to save Stitch, and then taking his moment and giving it to somebody else, and vice versa. What do I mean by that? So Stitch goes with Jumba, Stitch is captured, and then Lilo is then the one to go and save Stitch, when in the original, Stitch breaks out after being captured by Gantu, and he's the one to go and save her, leading to the iconic line again, nobody gets left behind. And in this one, Lilo's the one to save him. They escape. Lilo robs Stitch of that moment to be a hero in everybody's eyes, and then the writers repay them all by robbing Lilo of the scene where she flaunts the adoption papers in the councilwoman's face, telling her that this is an official document, and if you take Stitch from us now, you're stealing. There was none of that. There was barely a fight. There was barely a fight over where Stitch was going to go, what his sentence was going to be, where he was going to remain in exile. Stitch said his iconic lines, which the audio sounded almost exclusively from the original. His lines of, "This is my family, it's little and broken, but good, yeah, still good." That one, that got me a little bit. That always gets me. But there were so many plot point switches that it kind of made my neck hurt looking back and forth to see who was getting which scene and who wasn't getting a scene and who was getting omitted and what was getting omitted. And then in the end, the biggest change is that Nani actually does lose custody of Lilo. But it's okay, because the neighbors said that they will assume custody of Lilo, and Nani can go off and pursue her dream of being a marine biologist, an interest that she flaunted throughout the entire movie by showing nothing but indifference and disgust and annoyance towards the idea of an extraterrestrial species on planet Earth. So, score 1 for the marine biologist. I wish I could have seen more of where Nani's character was going to go with that. I don't know exactly. It felt like they gave her strong traits just to give her strong traits. But the thing is, we loved Nani because she was strong, not because she didn't have a background or an interest in college or anything. We loved her because she was a dedicated sister and mother who was willing to do anything to protect Lilo and to give her the best life that she could. And we saw the struggle. We saw that restaurant job after restaurant job. She was willing to do anything that she could to put food on the table. The way that she eyed that fire truck in the original, praying that it wouldn't go left, praying that it wouldn't go up the hill to her house, and when it did, she sprinted. That's what we love so much about Nani. Nothing was empty about her. You didn't have to give her this extra interest of being of a marine biologist and having all these accolades. The only reason I say that is, like, yes, we want people to have full backgrounds, but if you're going to give them a full background, make it make sense, because I didn't get at all that she had any interests other than the fact that the wall told me so. And then she decided to go off to college, which, to that point, if she was having trouble paying for health insurance and being paycheck to paycheck and having trouble paying these monthly bills, how the hell did she have money for college? All in all, writing a 101, if you're going to change something about a character or make an alteration, make it deliberate and commit. Ohana means family. Family means no one gets left behind or forgotten. All right, I'm off to college. Now, all that silliness and everything really just culminates into the one central question: why a remake? One could say that it's specifically to rework a story. I would argue that the story that they ended up telling of Lilo and Stitch, knowing that you have previous IP that everybody is going to be comparing it to, the result here was a lesser version, a less believable version, a less emotionally charged version. And so if you're going to rework a story with all of these parts that don't make sense and you're kind of hamstrung by a budget, then the story that you're reworking is not going to come out better than the original. Is it to make it feel more relatable? Live action tends to have an opportunity to make people feel a little bit more closely to the characters because it's live action, but I would argue that live action doesn't always make people feel that way, because I can cry over Toy Story 3 and none of those toys look actually real, yet I can look at the most accurate lion I've ever seen sing "Can't Wait to Be King," the Lion King remake, but know for a fact that I won't get any of the crazy, awesome, colorful, animated emotions from this lion because it's meant to look like a real lion, and spoiler alert, real lions don't smile like that. And because of that, you have movies like Lion King and Mufasa and The Little Mermaid that just damage the heart and soul of the film because you can't accurately portray emotions on animals that are made to be emotionless. Like, show me a fish that can actually show emotion. And to that point, how can you tell if something's crying underwater? Unfortunately, one of the last reasons to do a remake is because it's a guaranteed cash grab. A remake tells a story that's already been told. It piggybacks off a generational audience that has grown up loving the story and relies on you having previously seen it in the hope and nostalgia and excitement to show it to not only your friends who've grown up with it, but a new generation who's never seen something like this. And again, I'm old enough now to where the animated films that I grew up with that came out when I was little are now getting remade. And people are going back to it and they're bringing their kids and they're bringing their nieces and nephews and all the younger ones. And why is it only kids movies? Well, guess what? Kids can't go for free, so they're going with at least 1 or 2 ticket buyers, thus tripling the profits at the box office. So yes, they're going to keep doing these. If they're just cash grabs, then we should just acknowledge them for what they are. But what we should also acknowledge is the fact that these remakes are coming at the expense of the actual story. And that's the thing that upsets me the most, is because I have so much faith in Disney and I want them to do well and I want them to put on the story and show that I know they can. Hell, Disney World is my favorite place, and every time I go and see Happily Ever After, I bawl my eyes out because of the story that show shows me every night, and they can do that every night on a whim and it's seamless. Do that here. Give them the other $100 million to make Lilo and Stitch the Lilo and Stitch that it deserves to be. Because if you're going to rework one of the most emotional, heart-wrenching, family-oriented film of your entire canon, then make sure the family works. And that's it for me, guys. I've been Writer Reacts. Thank you so much for being here. What did you think of Lilo and Stitch, the remake? Did you see it? What did you think of it? Leave a comment down below. And while you're at it, guys, leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a video. Check out everything else we got going on the channel. We're about to streamline some major content coming your way here. Patreon, support the channel. I really appreciate it. Check out that merch store. We got new stuff coming every single month. It's the best way to show you support the channel, and I really appreciate each and every one of you. Thanks for watching, guys. From one artist to another, stay creative, and I'll see you again.